The trait of believing that you can grow, or that you can improve, that you can change, is more of a predictor of how you'll improve rather than your actual ability to begin with.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Struggle Climbing Show. It's me, Ryan Devlin. I'm your host, and welcome to a pro clinic. Oh, it's been a little over a month since we've done a pro clinic. I love these episodes. If you're new to the struggle and you're not sure what a pro clinic is, well, I just invite an expert or experts in a specific area onto the show here to talk about a topic of interest that either I come up with or is submitted by a listener, somebody who's a Patreon member or an Apple subscriber. And this one was actually brought up by a couple people as I recently launched an app that I helped to develop. It's been in the works for over a year. It's called Intentional Climber. I would love for you to check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes there. But basically, what sets Intentional Climber apart from a lot of the other training apps out there is its emphasis on things like goal setting and journaling and reflection, and basically how we can tap into our motivations and our joy in order to help us become more consistent and try harder with all of our training so that we get the results that we want out of our climbing. And so goal setting as a foundational element to the Intentional Climber app was a bit of a jumping off point here. And then also coincidentally, or maybe not so because I reached out to them, Hazel Findlay is a contributor to Intentional Climber. She's contributed some really incredible guided meditations and provided a lot of insight and feedback on the app itself to make it what it is today, which I'm incredibly grateful for. And so she joins us here today, along with her partner, Angus Kille, and their baby, who you will hear a little bit in the background during this conversation, at which point Hazel ducks out to help out with her, and Angus and I continue the conversation. And this conversation went in directions that I wasn't expecting it to, which is just always such a delight. You know, I really thought we were going to have a fairly analytical exploration of goal setting and like what are effective goals and how can we break them down and all the stuff that I like to geek out about, because I found that goal setting is incredibly helpful for me as I'm focusing on my training and trying to do the hardest things I've ever done outside on rock or inside at the gym. And I've done quite a bit of that recently, which is great. I went from V4 to V8 in less than a year, and I used the Intentional Climber app and the goal-setting features and the projecting features to help me get there, which is cool. So I thought we were going to have kind of a nerdy exploration on that, and we do. But first, Angus found some soft spots in me, some emotional and mental pressure points, if you will, and he pressed on them. And I'm so glad that he did, because I'm telling you guys, the goals, which are incredibly important to help us achieve things if we want to achieve hard things, are really only meaningful if our why, if our purpose, if the foundation of why we're doing all of this is clear and true to who we are, is like an authentic motivation. And once you identify that North Star, then all the goals come in relatively easily, kind of as the scaffolding to make training and performance a linear process, or at least at times a linear process. So I won't belabor it because Angus and Hazel get into it really well here in this conversation, but I just want you to come into this conversation here with an open mind, being willing to explore your why. And once you do that, as you'll see that I do in this conversation here, and it kind of cracked me wide open. It cracked my heart and my mind wide open here. But once you explore that and you really land on it, which I have, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that on the backside of this conversation, then everything else just really comes into focus. So yeah, let's get right into this here. Obviously, you guys know Hazel. Hazel's been on the show a handful of times here. She's one of the most famous climbers in the world, and she's one half of the Strongmind founding team. The other half of the Strongmind founding team is her husband, Angus Kille, who's been climbing for, 15 years or something like that. Really hard, bold trad, really hard sport climbing. He pushes himself out of his comfort zone, and he just delights in this idea of his why, which is the pursuit of mastery. And I just love it so much. He's got a lot to share. He's an instructor. He's climbed all over the world. He's a very skilled climber. But in this conversation here, we're really looking at the mental side. And we're in very good hands because, as one of the founders of Strongmind, that is his speciality. I'm so excited that you're here for this one. Let's just get into it right now with Angus Kille. The strong minds behind Strongmind. Thank you guys for taking the time. Appreciate it. Are you just back from Mallorca?
Yeah, we got back 2 days ago.
Oh, amazing. How was it?
It was good. Yeah, it was really good. I got ill, which made things a bit challenging for a few days. But apart from that, it was really good.
I'm sorry to hear you got ill. Did you still climb?
Well, yeah, but just kind of like easy stuff to help with the group.
So we
But
were
it was
working on a
like,
retreat.
yeah, we were doing a retreat. It was like a mixture of sport climbing and deep water soloing. But
yeah.
I usually would like demonstrate falling in the water and that kind of thing. And I didn't do that on the first day. I was like, I had like a horrendous fever and chills and stuff. And I was like, I don't think I need to get in the ocean. I don't think that's going to help anyone. So you just did it, all that part of it, didn't
Yeah.
you?
Angus, you got double duty, double falls?
Yeah, it's just embarrassing because I'm really bad with cold water. Even though it's not
And
that
you're like,
cold.
it's not cold. And you're like, come out shivering.
Was this an altitude retreat that you were doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they watch you go in first and they're like, yeah, no, we're good. We'll pass.
There's a little bit of that, wasn't it?
A little bit of that, yeah.
Yeah,
It worked out really well.
That's awesome. That's cool. I'm really excited to get out there at some point in time, whether it's for one of the altitude ones or just to check out Mallorca. It looks really amazing. It's a bit of a jump for me over here. Did you have any Americans in the group?
Like
Yeah,
5.
5. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Good. Well, you know what? We're here to talk about goal setting and just kind of, we can look at it globally and then zero in on different areas. But I actually had a couple people write in and ask about what your all's thoughts are around setting goals for trips specifically, separate from maybe performance goals or, seasonal goals, these kinds of things. So we can chop this up in any way that makes sense. But I'm curious, since we're talking about Mallorca, did you all set any goals before going down there?
Not for our personal climbing, no. I think that would have been too much. Although you kind of had a few things in the back of your head to try, like specific routes. But would you
Yeah.
call them goals?
Yeah, I think that maybe say that like process goals, like I was, had an intention to try hard on something if I could, or just to fall off, or to go a bit higher. There's not like really specific, really set in stone goals. It's more like a lot of flexibility, and it's more about how much I can try or how much the kind of experience I want to have.
So process goals. I guess we'll get into the difference between process and outcome goals at some point. And I just didn't have the bandwidth to set any goals for myself. I think that's like a mum phenomena. It's like coaching, toddler, no headspace left, basically.
Yeah, did you not have an intention to just sort of get above the water?
I mean, I had like some coaching goals, give them, the best experience that they could have, be present with the group. And then whatever I could was more just like enjoy it, basically. Like any climbing I could do myself was more about just enjoying it. Yeah.
Well, let's kind of broaden out from just that trip there, but still stay personal for a second here and talk about just your all's relationship with goals as climbers, and maybe that's evolved over the years, but I'm curious how you just personally look at goal setting and the types of goals that you have found to either work or not work for you personally, and then I guess we can just start to break it down and broaden it out to the climbers that are listening.
So when I started climbing, like obviously, I did like the competitions and things like that, and I guess the comps are an obvious goal, right? But I wasn't really a serious competitor. But anyway, at the start of my professional climbing career, I was pretty bad at goal setting. I'm not a natural goal setter. I'm more of kind of like an intuitive, driftery type person. So over the course of my life, both in climbing and in like life and career, I've slowly got better and better at setting goals, is how I think about it. But I think that I did have some process goals that I had, but they were kind of like not as intentional as like they should have been, if that makes sense. So like one of my process goals was like to not always succeed on trad climbs. It's like to sometimes fail, to sometimes fall off. And then if I did sometimes fail and fall off, that would be like my metric for like, okay, I'm trying hard enough. So that was kind of just like in my, way of thinking. Sorry, our child is just really crying.
Can you hear our child on the...
I can only because I'm so attuned to it, being a father myself. I'm like, oh,
Okay.
child in the background. No, this is the benefit of having the both of you on. We can play zone defense right now. So Hazel has stepped away to check on the little one.
Yeah.
It's always right when the recording button hits.
I know.
The kiddo's like, wait, but you're supposed to have a 2-hour nap right now.
Yeah, she was genuinely supposed to have a 2-hour nap, and we like timed it really well. But yeah, classically, as soon as we start, she wakes up.
That's all right. This is real life, but also it's your turn anyway, Angus. So, and Hazel will let her, continue her thought when she comes back here. But how about for you? Has your relationship with goal setting evolved over the years?
Yeah, it has evolved. I think I'm a lot more like kind of the average climber or the average dude. Like I was always a little bit attached to goals, naturally set goals, naturally was like, yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this. And I still am, in that sense of, Hazel said she wasn't good at setting goals. What she was saying that she doesn't naturally just set them, and she's improved at setting them and being more intentional about that and all of this. Whereas I was like, you could say that I was good at setting goals in the sense that I was always had a goal, always like striving towards something. But I wasn't good in the sense that I wasn't so intentional or really reflective about why that goal and how it was serving me or my climbing, and like having a really sort of strong mindset around that. And in that sense, I've improved loads, and I really, a lot more intentional about why I'm setting something as a goal, how it's going to improve me as my climber, and what the bigger picture is. Like not just I'll be able to say I've done this. It's more like, oh, I'm going to learn all this stuff. It's a real weakness of mine, or like it's going to change my climbing, and I'm going to really understand something differently now. And when the goal doesn't pan out, or like, I don't sort of achieve it, if you like, I'm really aware of all the things that have happened on the way there and after that goal that are all just part of a bigger picture of progress and learning and climbing.
It sounds like with your evolution as a climber and working on mindset, and then just goal setting being within that ecosystem, if you will, a lot more kind of intentionality and reflection have come with that. So like, how are you, just like logistically speaking, how are you keeping track of goals and then kind of where you're at with them?
I can just think of a goal that I had like 2 or 3 years ago, and this was a really hard slab that I did. I'd never done like a hard slab route. This was like 14C or something, 14, yeah, something like that. Dude. I mean, it's like it's almost vert, but it is a slab. And yeah, I'd never done anything like that. So like, wow, if I do this, I'm gonna have learned a lot about slab climbing. Like but I kind of didn't really believe that it could be that hard. Like if it's either climbable or it's not, and at some point slab just you can't really get harder than a certain grade. But yeah, it was genuinely quite hard. And in that process, there was just so much for me to learn, such a steep learning curve, and so much of it was really technical, and like really like I kind of had to really keep a track of it. So can you hear the baby screaming on that?
Not much. It's totally fine. But if it's distracting to you or you want to go check on her, it's totally fine. We're chilling.
No, I'm good. Like Hazel will be distracted, but I'm like, I can pretty much.
Yeah, that's the dad mom DNA. That's where
honestly, yeah, that is it. Yeah. I'll just
yeah.
Just 2 seconds.
Yeah, you're fine.
I'm really sorry.
Oh, not at all. I mean, truly, no apology. I've got a couple kiddos.
And
I also, there's just no rush on this podcast. I mean, I'm happy to keep going, but I'm also, happy to like let you guys just relax and have your Friday if it doesn't work out.
That's really good for you. Well, this has never happened, so we're a bit like, what's going on? I'm totally fine to keep going. We could finish our little line of thought here. And
what's the route, Angus? I feel like I remember you posting photos on this, and I'm blanking on it now.
Yeah, the route's called Meltdown. It's like 8C plus 9A, so that's like what, 14C or something.
Yosemite Meltdown?
No, that's funny. So yeah, it's similar grade, but it's here. It's like out my window here in North
because I was like, I don't think most people are calling Meltdown slab. It's like a heinous finger crack.
No, it's a slate slab, so it's in the quarries here in North Wales. And,
got it. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was like the hardest slab in the world when it was put.
Oh, I was going to say it's got to be because I don't think there's a 9A plus slab, is there?
Don't know. I think there might have been something, but I think it might be like solid 9A. But anyway,
Yeah, okay. Anyway, okay.
Yeah,
So this was a very, very, not only a difficult project, but something that it was pushing you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, and like, a lot of the details of it were really technical, really kind of like stuff that you got to remember. There's just so much I was learning that I had to really try to hold all this information in my head. And I realized on the way out from the crag, I would just voice note to my phone. I just started talking to myself, which is kind of a weird thing to do because you don't know what pronoun to use for yourself. Do you say I or do you say you? It's quite weird. I'm just like podcasting into my phone,
right?
Like monologuing, and just downloading all the information that I just learned. And then you start really realizing how much you'd learn and how much like information is like in all those movements that you would never like articulated before. You'd never like really, all this stuff is normally implicit. It's normally in your body, but it was kind of like technical enough that I kind of needed to record it. And then like on the way back, when I come in for the next session, on the walk in, I'd have my AirPods in, listening to my voice note from before and like re-uploading all the information that I just learned from the previous go. I really loved it. It was so cool because I was like really getting all this like learning was really tangible because I was literally like saying it out loud to myself every time and then like re-uploading it. That was keeping a track of like what was going on with that project and what I was learning, what was new, and then had to write over the information that I'd kind of like learned because it was changing all the time. There's a slab, so like I learned so much about shoes. I had like the stiffest shoe that I could get hold of, and then I got the resolers to put an extra stiffener in it, and so they were double stiff. Like Scarpa have like a little stiffener plate in their shoes. I got them to put an extra one in, and then put stiff rubber on that, and then soft rubber on the one that was smearing, the foot that was smearing. And then like I would like razor blade the shoes all the time, and I'd get them buffed, and I would take them to the resoler because they were in the village, every session or every other session to get the edges just right for standing on like tiny bits of slate. And I would put the shoes in like a separate bag so they didn't pick up any dust in my bag, so they would stick better to rock. Because when you buff shoes straight out of the resoler, they'll stick to each other. And you can like hold the shoes together like that.
Right.
Yeah. I would like do all these things to make sure that my shoes are like optimal. I get them to sand the edges so they tape it in. If you get like a badly resoled shoe or badly made shoe, the edges sort of stick out a bit. Or if you use them too much, they start to splay out. So imagine you're getting like a fraction of an inch of rubber sticking out beneath the toe of your boot.
Right.
You can get that sanded back in, and you sort of get your footholds get bigger because you're not taking up that foothold with dead rubber.
It's so good, dude. The level of tactics that it requires on something that's so like dime edge, super technical like that is fascinating to me. I did see that you posted a picture recently of the new Scarpas that have like the carbon fiber support through there. I've been meaning to, I don't climb much slab, but I've been meaning to see if they'll send me a pair so I can just try them out on the very rare slab that I climb. But I digress. I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole here on tactics, although that could be a whole other podcast. I'd like to stay on goals, but why don't we stay on this route on Meltdown for a minute and explore the goals that you set for yourself? Obviously, the route itself was a goal, but then what other goals are you setting along the way? You mentioned process goals and outcome goals. So maybe you could start by explaining some general definitions of what that is, and then use this route as an example to tell us about how the goals fit into those buckets.
Yeah, great. So people use slightly different definitions. So thanks for prompting me to like define my terms here. Yeah, outcome goals, or like you could also call them end goals. Outcome goals end, right? There's an outcome, there's a stop to them. It's a thing that you've done and you can sort of take away. You could write it down, or like you could put it in your logbook or whatever. An outcome goal is something that finishes, that you finish.
So send the route.
Send the route, exactly. Yeah. I want to climb this route, or I want to climb this grade, or I want to climb, 5 10s this year. That's an outcome goal because you did it. Or you can just finish it. And they're great because we all know what they are. And you've done them.
Right.
So they're really clear, really measurable, really trackable, exchangeable. I can tell Ryan about my outcome goals. Process goals don't really end, right? And that makes them harder to track. They're a bit of a pain, but they're also really useful because they might better represent our efforts. So a process goal is something like, I want to improve my footwork. I want to try harder. I want to become less scared of falling. If you said I want to be able to fall off and lead, that'd be an outcome goal. But if I say I want to just be less scared of falling, that'd be a process goal. So it's something that doesn't end. It's a process. And these are really useful because even though they're annoying, you can't say that I did it or didn't. But you do. If I fall off the last move of my project, I didn't get the outcome goal. I didn't do the 512 that I'd set myself. But your process goals will represent the efforts you've put in if you set them right. So if you say I want to get better at climbing cracks, I'm going to set myself an 11D crack, and that's my sort of outcome goal. But really, my process goal is to improve hand jams. If I just keep falling at the chain or keep falling at the last few moves of this 511D, I don't meet that outcome goal. But the process goal of becoming better at cracks or improving my hand jams, I'm still reaching that goal. I'm still not meeting the goal, if you like. If I'm not completing it, I'm still sort of working towards that goal of becoming a better crack climber. It's a very useful way of kind of avoiding this weird trap that is really common in climbing because we have such clear outcomes, such clear kind of you either sent it or you didn't. It's a very useful way of having your efforts better represented in what you're doing and not being in this position like, oh, I put all the effort in and got nothing back. I put all the effort in and I missed it. Or I'm coming home empty-handed. Or I failed. It's a really useful way of dealing with fear of failure. And what's interesting about process goals is that you sort of think about them as the sort of stepping stone goals, or the little ways that are going to help you get to your outcome goal of your 11D or whatever it was. But really, you sort of take a step back and you really set really intentional about how you set these goals, and these are sort of really aligned with your climbing values and what you really want to get out of climbing. You realize that those process goals are kind of the bigger goals. They are the bigger picture, the bigger direction of where you're going to go, and you can think about them as like a little bit more like a bit more of a sort of north star, a bit more aligning to you. They're more like the direction you're going rather than just the little points you pick up along the way. And then it's flipped around on itself. Now these sort of 511D and the 12A are little stepping stones towards me becoming a better crack climber or a better climber.
That kind of answers my next question, although I don't know, maybe I'm more confused now, to be honest. I was going to ask you, it's a chicken and an egg situation here, I feel like, at least the way that I'm understanding this right now. And in that, which comes first for the average climber? Or maybe it's a personality thing, setting a process goal and then creating outcome goals to kind of support you along that process or keep you kind of on that track. In your example, I want to get better at crack climbing. I'm going to set that as my process goal. Okay, I want to climb this 5.9 crack and then this 10A crack and this 10B crack and, kind of set some routes or whatever, but they're all within that lane, if you will, that process lane of crack. I'm not going to go set myself overhung pumpy jug climbs because that's not going to serve my process goal. Or on the other side, the egg side, the chicken or the egg side is, okay, here's a route that I'm super inspired by. It's this 11D crack that I've walked by for years and been so intimidated by it, but dang, it's so rad. I'm going to set that as my goal for next year. And now I know I need to get better at crack climbing. So I'm going to set a process goal of getting better at crack climbing.
That's a really good question. It's a really, really good question. And yeah, I'm going to answer it in a quite funny way. I'm going to say like you take an even bigger step back and we're going to look at like the bigger process goal, or even like we can even stop calling this process goal. It's more like your kind of whole direction in climbing. It's your North Star. It's your whole why, like why you're a climber. And you might get to that why a little bit. You'll see the indicators of what your why is when you looked at that route that you were just describing and you got that buzz and you're like, oh, this is what I want to be a climber for. You're getting a real sense of that. But that will take a real big step back and go, what are my climbing values? Like, why am I a climber? What do I really want from climbing? What is my like whole big picture direction? My North Star, my kind of my compass, if you like, that is directing your whole efforts, the whole thing. And it could be different for everyone, and it could be that you just really love trying hard. It's about just trying hard, or it's about like maybe it's more about community and just spending time with people outdoors and just being in a place. Or maybe it's just about learning. And, for me, and I think Hazel would say the same thing, it's about mastery. It's about an endless journey of learning, and have like a real strong sense of like what I'm trying to master. And I know that I will never like end, that I will never finish. I'll never be the master. I'll never have mastered climbing, but I have a sense of what climbing means to me, as in like what kind of climbing inspires me. And I have a real sense that I could keep learning forever about that, and I will enjoy that process. And I'm committed to that journey of just learning and learning and learning and loving. And you probably tell I'm really excited talking about just the idea of mastering this, or not mastering it, but just the process, just going the journey, just keeping going, and it'll never end. And that's my kind of North Star.
So then let's take that North Star, and to your point, we will all have a different North Star. And by the way, like that is a freaking therapy session right there, because you just said like, why are you? And like my whole face just like went blank, or my whole brain went blank, because I'm just like, wait a minute, why am I doing it, Angus? I don't know. Sometimes I don't know.
Is like, and this is why it's such a good question, because that is the thing. We talk about goals and we talk about the chicken and the egg and where do we start and the goals, but this is the why. It needs to come first. And it's probably the thing that we would say people get most wrong with setting goals, is they don't think about the why first. They think, oh yeah, I'd love to have climbed 513, that'd be great, And that's, you're kind of in this position of thinking, I would love to have climbed it, or yeah, that looks great, but not really consider, what is your why? Like, why are you doing that? And making sure that's coming from a place that's really authentic to you, and not just authentic to like Instagram, or how how you're ever going to share it on some like online logbook or something, or how it sounds like when you're in the pub or the bar or whatever. You come back to the why of like, what is your motivation? What's your why?
Yes. It's interesting. Let's pause for a second, just so I can inject myself into this, which is one of the benefits of being a podcast host. And I feel like my why has shifted, or it's like it's kind of shifting sands, and I just want to bounce that off of you, since you do a lot of these coaching sessions with amateurs and pros alike. Like I started my why started that climbing was a way that I could get exercise and not have my mind kind of ruminating on a bunch of work. It was like the first thing I discovered at the gym, where when I was doing it, I was so kind of in the moment, I wasn't stressing out about work and all of that. And so like that was kind of the original why, was like, okay, cool, this is a really fun way to exercise, where like if I'm on a treadmill, I'm just still thinking about work shit. But if I'm on a wall and I'm gripped, I'm not worried about it, or I'm not thinking about it. But then that kind of led me into outdoor climbing and multi-pitch climbing. And then the why there, which is still very much in my heart, is I just love being outdoors and truly connecting with nature on a big day, and in kind of a, an epic sunrise to sundown way with a group of friends, so then that really became my why. But then we had kids, and we're busy with work, and we moved to Kentucky, and there aren't like the big walls out here like there were when I lived in Southern California. And so now the why is more, or the purpose, if you will, is more about like trying really hard and trying to see like how far I can push my body. Now I'm in my mid 40s, and I'm like working through the grades, and I'm kind of grade obsessed, which is almost embarrassing to say out loud, but I don't care. Like whatever. It's just, that's kind of what's motivating me right now, is like, I wonder if I could do an 8A, and let's see if I can then do an 8B, and just, I don't know, like how far can I push this body of mine? And that's been pretty exciting and motivating. And obviously different goals, outcome goals and different process goals would be different for all of those different whys that I just told you. And so I guess, I don't know, I'll pause here. Like, just how does that land for you? Just kind of my shifting sands of whys over the years here.
Yeah, and your whys can totally change, and you've changed as a climber, and that sounds like quite a long timeline as well. It's natural that they would change. What I thought was really interesting about all the sort of major whys that you explained there, that they were all experience based. They're all about, I'm focused when I'm on the wall. I'm not thinking about work. I'm focused on what's happening now. When you went multi-pitching, it was like, I'm in nature, I'm having a nature experience with my mates, I'm seeing the sunset, it's beautiful out here, I'm in a place and I'm part of the landscape or whatever. And then, it was about trying hard, and that was an experience of trying hard. And all of those things are very sort of intrinsic. They're about your experience. It's not about and what someone else would say about it. It's not about what it's an intrinsic motivation because it's a reward that happens in the task. You have that reward. You have that kind of, you're searching for something that happens while you're climbing. You're not searching to have done it. Obviously, the grade thing is a little bit different, but there's a really useful motivation to be able to tap into. And all of the whys were kind of like, based around experience. So you might say, well, I'm looking for a certain kind of experience, and that experience changes. But, it does, whether it's trying hard or being in nature or just being very focused, all of those are about being present in the moment. And I think there's a bit of a common thread there. And I think you could, in any case, distill from that like a why, even if it's not like the one that carries through your whole climbing career, whatever why you have right now, you can still find that and, distill from that, your sort of North Star, if you like, and see if that resonates with you. Is my, you could ask yourself, is my goal right now for, in climbing, am I climbing because I want to try hard, or is it because I want to have a certain kind of experience, play with it, see how that sounds when you say it out loud, and go from there.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think this then gives us a great opportunity to explore going down down the chain. Because you said, let's zoom way out. Let's think about our why. And so hopefully everybody who's listening and has been listening to me ramble for a second here has also looked inside and thought about, in this moment, what is just really filling your cup with your climbing, and what gets you excited and lights you up as you think about the next months or years of your climbing life. Then, if I'm understanding correctly, that gives us, that North Star there then gives us a bit of a roadmap or some indication of how we can set our goals. And I don't know if we're now back to the chicken and the egg of, is it the process goal or is it the outcome goal that we set that then the process rolls up into? But once we've identified that, where do we go? Once we have our why. All right, y'all, just a quick break here to tell you about an app that I have helped to develop. It's been in the works for more than a year, and it has really changed how I have been training and how I've been identifying and then blowing through plateaus, and that is an app called Intentional Climber. And I'm so excited about this, you guys. I've been using it kind of on the down low, like secretly beta testing it for many months now. And it was my main tool to help me structure my training, my reflection, my mindset, and my projecting process as I went from V4 to V8, ultimately sending my big proj, Bulldog, out here at the Red River Gorge, and Intentional Climber was with me, and they're supporting me every step of the way. So what's the deal? I mean, look, it's an app, okay? It's a training app, so it's got like all the exercises and timers in there. You can do strength assessments and track those with charts over time. All the things that I think we've come to expect with climbing training apps. So what makes it different? Well, it was designed specifically for people like you and me who are very busy climbers so that we can get the most out of every session, so that we're more focused, more consistent, more motivated, and more reflective on every single session that we have, whether that's at a gym, at our house, on a hangboard, or outside. Intentional Climber was built to help us form better habits as climbers, so we're not wasting any sessions. And we've partnered with world-class coaches to help that happen as well. There's an entire mindset tab in there with meditations from Hazel Findlay. There's journal reflecting features. You can attach beta videos and notes. Every single session you do, it's going to ask you what went well and what you want to work on next time. So when you start your next session, whether that's a board session or a weightlifting or climbing, you're going to be reminded. You'll start that session and you're going to get that little reminder up there that says, hey, this is what you wanted to work on. And then we've also got coach plans in there from world-class coaches. So if you download right now and you use code STRUGGLE, not only are you going to get a discount on the app, but you're also going to unlock a Stronger Fingers program from Coach Chris Hampton of Power Company Climbing. That's an 8-week program designed specifically for busy climbers to get stronger fingers in a short amount of time. It's an awesome program, and you get it for free just by using code STRUGGLE. You can download it on the App Store or over at Google Play. I'll put a link right there in your show notes. And again, use code STRUGGLE when you're signing up for it, and that's where you'll get those special perks on Intentional Climber. All right, let's get after it.
So I think, yeah, let's make sure that we've got your why here. So you said it's about pushing yourself and trying really hard. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how I feel like it is right now. I just came off of a bouldering season, and that was maybe a good one. And of course, the listener who's been following my journey is I am very much a route climber. I've never been a boulderer in my life, aside from doing some stuff on the kilter board. And so I just took a year and was like, you know what? I'm going to put the rope away. And so I identified this V8 boulder, and the hardest boulder I'd ever climbed was a V4. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try to push myself out of my comfort zone, and I'm going to try to climb this boulder. And I dedicated like a year to it, and I did it, and it's awesome. And now I'm kind of, I guess the outcome was satisfied there. I sent that boulder. It also satisfied a big process goal of mine, which was like, hey, can I get better at bouldering? Like, I don't even know if I can boulder. And that was cool. So now I'm like swinging the pendulum the other way, and I'm like, okay, what's going to push me out of my comfort zone in a different way? And it's the, 130 foot, 50-degree overhung cave route at the Red. That's also going to be the hardest grade I'll have ever climbed as an 8A if I do it. So that would be the outcome, right? The process, I think, is like, okay, how hard can I push myself in an endurance capacity, like an overhung, pumpy climbing endurance capacity? Like, what am I capable of achieving if I really dedicate myself to that line of like training and projecting?
That's great. Yeah. So you described that really well. What your outcome goals and your process goals were. You said what's common to both of those goals that you just described is that you said you wanted to push yourself outside your comfort zone, or perhaps just push yourself. Why do you want to push yourself?
That's a good question. I think it gives me like a real sense of purpose, to be honest. Like the day-to-day life is, a couple kids in elementary school and taking care of my parents who are getting old, and, just paying bills and all of that stuff. And so like what kind of gets me fired up is having a bold goal where the outcome is very uncertain. And I'm like, you know what? Can I do this? Like, am I capable? Can I prove to myself that I can do something that seems improbable? So I'm sure there's quite a bit of ego that's wrapped up in there, like, okay, I'm going to do something really hard and prove to myself that I'm still young and virile or whatever. I'm not sure what deep-seated Freudian place that motivation comes from, but it's also wrapped up with like the crew that I climb with, and they're just like a great group, and they're all pretty hard charging and I think similarly, I don't know if similarly motivated, but we tend to want to climb like similar things, even if we have different motivations for it. And so, there's community wrapped up in that as well. But I definitely think it's like, I have a hard time putting in 2 hours on the kilter board or lifting weights or, doing any sort of hard training session if I don't have if I'm not fired up about some sort of goal or project. And I'm not quite sure like where that motivation is, like the origin of it. Maybe you have a sense for it, having talked to a lot of climbers.
Yeah. So what is that? When you say purpose, we were touching on something there when you said purpose, and you were talking a lot about trying hard or pushing yourself out your comfort zone and like seeing what you're capable of, right?
Yeah.
What's the purpose bit?
I mean, obviously I have greater purposes in life, like raising amazing kids and in like supporting my incredible wife. And, there's deeper purpose, but I guess like climbing purpose for me, it gives me something to be like every day to be really excited to work on. That's not obligatory. Like it's my own thing, And so like I really like, waking up and opening up my app and being like, okay, what's on the training plan for today? And how is that going to help me get to this route that I want to do? And yeah, I don't know, maybe it's a combination of like process and outcome goals that I was just saying there as well. But yeah, I think like the sense of purpose is just, I think that I'm super psyched on climbing, and I want to continue to progress because I think progression shows that I'm still like capable of doing more. And then that gives me an opportunity to know that I can push myself further. Yeah, I don't know. It's like this, like, it's just like a cycle,
If you stopped progressing, what would happen then?
I think if I stopped progressing like in my current style, I'd probably pick a different style. Like I really like the idea of progression, at least right now, like the experience of progression. And so I think if I stopped progressing on overhung Red River Gorge sport climbs, I'd maybe say, I wonder how far I can go trad climbing at the Red, or whatever. I would maybe just like shift to something again where I feel like I can progress, where I can set bold goals, and where the outcome is uncertain, where I can try and take on something that's like maybe seems audacious and then just do it, or maybe not do it. But so far I've taken on some big goals and I've done them. So we'll see. I don't know. Maybe I'll be calling you for like a therapy session in a year if I don't do this thing.
So I think it's really interesting because there's so much awareness here of like, what you're doing and your motivation, and it's really interesting to hear, how it comes up for you. I think there's a lot of like self-efficacy thing coming up here. You put effort in and you see results, and it's like you're seeing rewards from your efforts and from applying yourself right, and pushing yourself. And there's loads of that. And I think that's really cool. I think it'd be interesting. I think there's a deeper. I'd imagine there are deeper motivations here to untangle, and I think that, you could probably work out a little bit clearer what your what your actual values are in climbing, as in like why are you choosing climbing and not something else, and like what are you getting from this. And it does seem like there's a lot of just listening to you talk, there is a lot of learning involved, that you enjoy the process of learning how to apply yourself, and it's not too dissimilar from how I would think about it. But I think if your idea could be clearer about what your why is there, because you've got a sense of wanting to push yourself, but it is a little bit tangled up with needing to see progress, or perhaps that's not fair to say you need to see progress, but seeing progress is part of the motivation. Or you mentioned ego, or what your friends are thinking, or how they're motivated. And so there's a little bit of a package here of wanting to see progress, and how you just have. It's almost like you see what you are already doing in your climbing, your habits, or your existing climbing as it is, and you're trying to understand what your motivations are from that, rather than going from kind of like first principles of why be a climber, what am I doing here, why am I why am I a climber, and then going from there. Okay, there's an actual thing here that isn't just about how I'm viewed among my friends, or any ego boost. There's a sort of thing here that I'm getting out of climbing that that is kind of really authentic to me, and not kind of adjudicated or judged or validated by other people. It is really personal to me.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this. I mean, this is unsurprisingly, I was like, we're going to have a simple conversation on goals, and now it's become a much deeper, more introspective conversation that I really am grateful that like this is the kind of the threads that we're pulling on right now, because I think for a lot of people who are listening, this is the most important question to ask and explore. Then from that, we'll talk about kind of how do we get into the goals that then help us to continue to support that greater why.
Just to caveat all of that, I don't have the answer here, and I could be wrong about what I've said. I could be wrong about your motivations. I'm only just picking up what I can gather from what you shared, and I definitely don't know what exactly your motivation is. But those are just how I interpret it, like what you were sharing there.
Well, no, and I appreciate it. I mean, I think just in the asking of the question is the most beneficial, because it just interrogates maybe some kind of assumptions that I had made or not really taken time to explore. And it's just a great exercise, if nothing else. It's a question that I ask a lot of the people that I interview on the show, the elite climbers that I have on, and weekend warriors alike. It's just like, why climbing? Why not downhill skiing or pickleball or whatever, like what is it about climbing? But I haven't really taken a whole lot of time to kind of interrogate myself on that. But for those who are listening, and then also myself included, how do you recommend we go through that? Is it something that we can do on our own, or do we need, somebody, could be somebody like yourself or a climbing partner or friend or therapist or coach or whomever to kind of push and pull on these assumptions that we're making to try to help us get to that more distilled, clearer why?
I think it really helps to have someone to talk to about it. I think a climbing partner, a friend, a long car journey, someone that is like introspective as well and open to like having these kind of conversations. You could also get, we actually have some free resources on our site to sort of help with this. Actually, we have like a mini course as well that helps. But I don't want to like sell our stuff here. You could really do this yourself by being introspective and asking a few of the right questions. I think those questions.
Well, let's just pause there for a second, Angus, because I appreciate the humility, but you guys have put an incredible amount of work into what you do at Strongmind, and I've had people on my show who have taken your courses and other friends as well who have just gotten such an incredible benefit out of it. So it will not come off as any sort of plug or ad or anything like that. Obviously, I'm familiar with like the Fear of Falling course and the kind of the performance hacks, but I wasn't familiar with the mini course or whatever resources that you have that kind of help us to explore the why.
Yeah, we've put up, because we created a course called Mindset Makeover for just this reason. And it's like, it's not one that we push or we talk about a lot, but we were just really interested in this kind of process that we're talking about now as it happens. And yes, we've made like quite a short course on that, and we just put out some resources that, like Hazel recorded a meditation and there's like a workbook you can just get for free. And then if you can go through sort of do-it-yourself course that, well, basically you can look at the workbook that we give away. It sort of has these as sort of headings that you can like write your own thing under. The course is essentially taking you through that with like, a bit more or quite a lot more information. But the process that I suppose we would recommend is like having a look at what because essentially we're trying to build a mindset, build a way of looking at what you're doing, how you challenge yourself, or why you're doing things, a set of like assumptions and beliefs that you have that are kind of serving you best. And the way I like to think about mindset is that, there are more than one ways of looking at things, more than one way of looking at things, looking at your climbing or your project. And those ways can be equally valid in theory, but one will serve you better than the others. And so we choose a frame of mind that is valid and also just serves us a bit better. And so, really obvious like kind of mindset is like growth mindset, where we kind of hold the assumption that our traits aren't fixed. And, it's actually not really much of an assumption at all. The science is really strong on this, that, that we have so many traits that aren't fixed and that we have like, neuroplasticity and we can change in regard to, or effectively we can grow. So it's this growth mindset. So, and, researchers found out that it's really, really well studied actually. It's where the word mindset was kind of popularized by Carol Dweck. But like the trait of believing that you can grow or that you can improve, that you can change, that your traits aren't fixed, is more of a kind of predictor of how you will improve rather than your actual ability to begin with. And so like adopting this mindset of like, I can just get better at bouldering, even though I've never, not really spent much time bouldering and I've only bouldered V4. That mindset of like, I can get better. That is the sort of the key ingredient. So that's an example of a mindset. You could have a mindset of like, well, I'm not good at bouldering and I've never bouldered hard. Therefore, I'm just not a strong, not a boulderer. I'm not a powerful kind of climber. Or you could have the growth mindset of, I kind of wasn't proved at this. Those are two kind of, you could argue that they're valid, they're equally valid. I actually think that, the science and the growth mindset is really good, but we adopt the one that serves us best. And so what I've identified under there is like, there's an underlying belief about your traits, about whether you can grow or not. And we'd recommend identifying your underlying beliefs, identifying what you value in climbing, what's important to you. And then from there, finding your kind of North Star, if you like, your why. Does that kind of make sense?
No, it totally does. And I appreciate you framing it in that way, because I would sometimes consider myself just delusional in picking bold goals and just being like, I can do that. Just an incredible inflated sense of ability. but now I can frame it as, no, it's growth mindset. I believe I can do this. Yeah. At some point in time, I'm sure there will be an incongruity between what I believe I can do and what I can actually do. But at least so far, it's been working to have this kind of irrational belief in myself and my abilities. But that begs the question, if we can just kind of take it to the extreme, is there such thing as a bad motivation or a bad why?
That's interesting. I would say, so basically, that work that, just describing how we might find like your values, your underlying beliefs, and your kind of North Star, your why in climbing. I think in all of those, it's important to be kind of honest and really self-reflective and authentic. What we're really trying to find is something very, very authentic to you. And if it were really authentic, I don't think there is a bad why. But I think what a bad why would look like is one that's kind of located, like externally located. You might call this a magnetic north, right? So something that you picked up because those are the values of the people around you. And naturally, like our culture and the values of the people around us affect what we value. That's like totally normal. But if we're just thinking that we want to be, let's just say I want to be a lead climber because I go in the gym and everyone leads, right? And I just always thought I wanted to be a lead climber. It was actually all I really care about is movement. And I don't actually want to, leading isn't really part of what brings me to climbing and makes me want to be a climber. It's the movement on the wall, and I could do that on a top rope, or I could do it on a bouldering wall. So that might be an example of like an assumption or a belief that's kind of come from other people and is not authentic to you. And so that would be like a bad why. But really, if we were to find a proper why by kind of definition, if we were to find like an actual sort of a true north for you, that would be like a really authentic one. It would come from you, and it would be, it'd be one that isn't kind of validated by other people, I think.
Yeah, that sounds like the most challenging potential outcome in running this exercise. If I'm just kind of thinking into the future, so I'm going to work through this workbook that you all have. If there's an incongruity between my honest why and what I'm actually currently doing or what I've kind of set as my goals, that seems like the most uncomfortable place to be. And to use your example there of the climber who loves movement, but has been, their crew is all about lead climbing and they're in a lead climbing group and maybe they just want to move on boulders. If you go through that exercise and you kind of stare that in the face, then you have to make some pretty big changes to your climbing life and goals and community and plans, I would think, right? If you discover your why and how you're already climbing and in your goal setting, they match up nicely, that's nice. But if there's some sort of dissonance there, then I'm assuming some big changes then need to be made.
I mean, I expect there's going to be like a little bit of dissonance, but really if you're like a climber and you enjoy being a climber and you're going out bouldering, chances are that aligns reasonably well with your why, right? You would be having a good time. You wouldn't be calling yourself a climber. You wouldn't be like, you'd be pretty kind of misaligned with your mindset and your values. There'd be quite a lot of misalignment there, and you probably wouldn't be having a good time, and you'd probably be ready to change what you're doing. So I think that kind of almost can't go wrong, right? If you've married someone that's like a poker player and you want to be a climber, then there'd be a bit of a shift in lifestyle, and one of them, I suppose you can go live in Vegas and that's pretty good climbing, but
that's right.
What I mean to say is that you would probably be aware of that misalignment already, and that's why you're doing this work, right? You're looking for something that's more aligned, and the process of finding that alignment might be a little bit difficult. Maybe you spend some less time with certain friends, but presumably you would get what you were getting out of those friendships or those relationships or those areas that you're in, whatever. You'd still value what you value in them, but you wouldn't be going, bouldering to get I'm really pumped on a steep motherload roof, right? Right. Motherload overhang on your like V8 boulder.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I mean, this has just been such a wonderful line of exploration here, man. I really appreciate it. And I am going to go through that workbook that you all have. I'll probably just jump into the course because I love everything that you guys do over there. But I think it's valuable. I think it's a valuable thing. I just do so many interviews that now I need to kind of interrogate myself here. But let's assume that I'm fairly close to the target, at least with what I explained to you, and there's going to be some benefit from drilling down to even a more pure why. So now let's look at the goals and the goal setting that we can do to help support that why. And I'm assuming just, for 99.9% of people who are listening to this, climbing is their passion and their outlet and not their career, because I'm sure there's a bunch of other stuff that's wrapped up in the why or the motivations and the goals if you're a professional and you have to pay bills by what you do. But we're just going to assume everybody here is just climbing because we love it. And we figured out our why. So now we've got goals, and why don't you take us down that path? You can use me, yourself, or just some sort of generic, climber, the climber who wanted to get better at crack climbing, whatever the case may be, to walk us through that, because we have the process goals and the outcome goals, and then I'm sure there's sub goals and things that go into the equation from there. So we've got our North Star. Now what do we do?
I think it all gets a lot easier after you found that North Star. Ideally, you would choose like the process, the sort of what this goal is serving in your climbing, in your bigger picture. How is it serving your why? And then from there, as you said, Ryan, like drilling down, here's my process goal, here's my outcome goal, here's the mini goals, I want to get to the third clip, I want to get to the link between the third and the fifth clip. I want to get my dead point accuracy better. I want to like improve my drop knees, as you said, all these little miniature stepping stones. You can imagine like, lots of little breadcrumbs leading up to the outcome, the big outcome.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that actually. If we could drill down on that, and we could look at the 14C slab project that you did, or any other project that you've done, or coach climbers that you've coached. With regard to setting project specific goals, there can be a lot of mini outcome goals along the way, like we just talked about there. There can also be, I guess, mini process goals. Can there be mini process goals, or are process goals, more overarching? Like a process goal would kind of take you over the course of maybe not just one project, but many projects or seasons. Whereas the smaller goals that are kind of more connected to a project, like, I want to make it through the crux, or I want to be able to get a high point. Those kinds of things can be very project specific. Where do process goals fit into kind of the big proj for the season, if you will?
Process goals, I think that they're like, the way I think about them is that they are big in the sense of how important they are to your big overarching thing, right? It's your why. So if let's say that you really want to try hard, and part of that trying hard is about being, really pumped at the top of a big route. And you could say, well, toe hooking, I could improve my toe hooking, but it's not really part of what you do at the red that much. But like, I don't know, knee barring or drop knees or something is like something I can really improve on. That's a big part of like my picture of what climbing is for me. So it's kind of a bigger process goal in the sense that like it is a bigger part of what I do.
Mm-hmm. So taking this into then the outcome goals, which for me, I guess just my brain, I've just always been, it's more type A or whatever. Like I do well with organization and lists and like checking things off. And because process goals can't really be checked off, they seem important, but they're like less appealing to me, but I can understand the appeal. But like, let's say, just using my example, I know that to climb these really long, steep, pumpy routes, I'm going to have to do a lot of like 3-finger drag. So a process goal could be get really good at 3-finger drag. An outcome goal could be like, okay, test my 3-finger drag on a 20 mil, edge weighted hang, and then set some goals to add 20 pounds to that or something. Like, am I kind of looking at that in the right way? I'm thinking of, okay, if I want to climb this route, I'm going to need to have these skills and get better endurance and yada, yada. And then find some outcome goals to essentially ensure or increase my likelihood of improving in those areas.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think that when you drill down on it, sometimes like testing the 3-finger edge, it can be a bit like, it does blur a little bit what's an outcome goal, what's a process goal. And sometimes they seem like a little bit more like relative concepts, but that absolutely makes sense. You've got your process goal, you want to improve your 3-finger drag, and here's an outcome goal that sort of leads, that helps you, pull that process forward. And then in the bigger picture, you might be like, okay, well, actually my process goal was bigger than reaching that arbitrary benchmark, because that serves all of my climbing, not just this goal.
Got it. Yeah, very cool.
Hazel's do we want Hazel to jump in? I mean, you've definitely improved the conversation, but what are you thinking?
Hi.
So we've gone through like why we went into a whole like mindset makeover type thing. We started talking about mindset makeover because we're talking about like the bigger picture of like why.
He completely psychoanalyzed me. I'm like, now I'm like just a puddle of mush right now. I have no idea why I climb.
I didn't intend to do that.
Classic.
Yeah, I'll probably take up bowling or something like that after this conversation. I have no idea what I'm doing here.
Broken. Yeah, whoops. You broke, Ryan. Don't come to Strongmind.
Just a shell of the man that I was 90 minutes ago. No, this has been amazing. This has been amazing. So, Hazel, yeah, just to bring up to speed, we really explored the why, and then are kind of backing into process goals and outcome goals that would support that greater why. And we've used some of Angus's routes as an example, and kind of my big goal for the year. I don't know. I'm going to re-examine everything after I take this mini course that you guys have.
What I thought we had left, Ryan, was like we could examine it a bit further, like put it into a few other contexts we really understand the process outcome thing. We could talk about SMART goals as an acronym to like check your goals that they are specific, measurable, or the
SMART is boring.
It's boring, but Ryan likes to be you like ticking like something more.
I like structure. Yeah, I like that.
Structure.
Yeah, we should talk about.
Do you want to just continue without me? I mean, she's not crying right now, but she's really upset at the minute. Her teeth are killing her, I think. We can't do any more cups. So.
You're off the hook, Hazel. We'll just, Angus and I can just wrap this up, and then we'll have you back for something else.
Okay, cool. All right.
Cool.
Good to see you, though. All right. So, yeah.
And the last thing I was going to say is actually that we could go into intrinsic and extrinsic, because we've been touching on it, and I don't know if you talk about it already in the podcast, but it's really relevant.
But is that so? Before we drill down on the tools to be able to set smarter goals, should we explore that intrinsic and extrinsic side of things?
I think as long as we drift into it at some point, it just because we were so close to touching it, and it just seemed like
well, we should touch it because I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like it's not binary. You know, am I intrinsically or extrinsically motivated? It tends to be all kind of mixed up. I mean, I talk about this with my friends all the time, where for me, for whatever reason in my season of life, the last couple of big things that I've done, my big climbing accomplishments, if you will, that I've been very proud of, have started with a very extrinsically motivated grade goal. I'm like, okay, I don't boulder much. What would be a crazy thing to try to do? V8 seems crazy. And then I find the project, and then I find the process to get delighted about in order to then ultimately just get this silly, you know, relatively speaking, like number. That's how I've kind of set my goals recently, but that may be a totally broken way of doing it. But it's like I find the intrinsic rewards and motivations after I identify the extrinsic one, if that makes sense.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I really think you could like try and flip that around, because I think that it's a win-win. If you're talking to you already, Ryan, like you clearly have like plenty of intrinsic motivation. You have plenty of like reason you love doing something, right? And extrinsic motivation is cool, right? There's nothing wrong with being extrinsically motivated. And we are always going to have extrinsic motivators. You can't remove them. It's natural to have some extrinsic motivation and totally have a blend of intrinsic, extrinsic motivations. You're never like motivated in just one way. There's always some sort of incentive going on. There's always something else. You know, if you are really, really intrinsically motivated to do a really hard route, it's impossible not to have some at least tiny amount of extrinsic motivation that you know that when you've done it, folk will know that you've done it, and that's like there's some kind of like extrinsic motivation for having done it, or just for like having, you know, putting in your logbook or whatever. It's really hard to like completely remove extrinsic motivators, and we don't need to. What I do think is that intrinsic motivation is really helpful. It's really useful, and it helps keep us focused on what we're doing, and we can lean into it. So it's not to remove extrinsic motivators, it's to like lean into the intrinsic, because it's so useful. And what's funny, and we'll go into this, is that even if you are like extrinsically motivated for something, for having done something, we reckon that you'd be better off leaning into the intrinsic motivation for doing it, because you're more likely to send it that way. Even if you kind of just want to do the V8, you have a better chance of doing it if you lean into the reasons that you have for trying it in the moment, for like being there on the rock rather than having done it. So I should probably like define my terms a little bit here, to just to be like clear what I mean by intrinsic and extrinsic. So like intrinsic motivation is rewards that happen within the task. So it's while you're doing it. So we had loads of that earlier when you were talking, like the joy of moving, the joy of trying hard, the process of learning, the joy of being focused and not thinking about work, being there in a place, touching rock and being in nature, like all of these things are things that happen while you're climbing, that happen in the task. Extrinsic motivation is motivation for like where the reward is outside the task. So it's motivation for having done it, or for what someone will say, or for for getting down. I'm on a multi-pitch and I'm extrinsically motivated because I kind of want to get back down again. Right. I'm motivated to not be here anymore. I'm motivated to have done it. I'm motivated to have put it in my logbook, to talk about it in the pub. Probably the biggest extrinsic motivator in the world is like money, probably. Like a lot of people do their job for money, but hopefully you also have some sort of intrinsic motivator that you can lean into, that you do enjoy solving problems, you do enjoy being with people, something like that. And obviously another really enormous extrinsic motivation is like social validation, what other people think, things like that. So that's enormous too. And we all going to have things like that. They're always going to be some sort of incentives. But leaning into those intrinsic motivators is really helpful, because if I'm really intrinsically motivated, or if I have intrinsic motivators that I can really lean into, like I really love trying hard, I'm motivated for being there in the moment, which means my attention is there in the moment where it needs to be. It's on the task, it's on the climbing. I can access flow, I can access focused states of performance, and my attention isn't being drawn to, am I going to clip the chains, or am I going to top out? Or what is someone going to say if I fall off? These kind of extrinsic motivators could pull our attention away.
Just you saying that, by the way, and I don't know if listener, you had this same reaction, but just you saying that, Angus, like kind of created a sense of lightness in my body. It almost alleviated send anxiety that I didn't even know I was carrying, because I'm not even trying to send anything right now. But just the thought of that, like just kind of you saying, oh, I'm here to try hard because I love trying hard, which I do right now. That's kind of the season of life that I'm in. That could be me being on a 11 minus or a 13 minus or whatever. Like if the motivation is, I just want to try hard, it really brings you into that moment. And then there's no expectation of doing the thing. I mean, ultimately, to your point, they're kind of intermixed, and hopefully there is an outcome of clipping chains at some point in time. Yeah, I really just liked how you phrase that. And I guess how do we, before we get into the specific goals maybe around that, how does one continue to check in on that? Because it's easy to lose the thread and be like, oh, okay, today I'm going to go try and send the thing or whatever, especially as you get closer. So how do you recommend people continue to tap into that intrinsic side?
First of all, just being really aware of your motivators and being aware of just like asking yourself, not just how motivated am I? How am I motivated? Why am I doing this? We're going back to the why again, right? Name your motivations, name why you're doing this. The work we did, what we already talked about earlier in this conversation, is already part of that work. Mm-hmm. Why am I here? And
you're thinking about that, like you're driving to the crag and you're thinking about that. You're just trying to remind yourself.
Yeah, I think actually just saying out loud, or even just to yourself, like why you're there, or what your intentions are for a session, because that will help bring it up as well. Because like if you can remind yourself, what are my intentions for this session? My intentions are to like have a nature experience, right? Or my intentions are to like try hard or to learn something, right? All of these things, and if you can name them, be aware of them, they're much easier to bring to mind. They're much easier to lean into when the extrinsic motivators start cropping up, which is totally natural. So I think like one thing you can do is always name your intention for a session. Say it out loud. Say it to your partner. Your partner will better know how to support you, how to talk to you about your goals and how you're challenging yourself, and not to cheer you on in quite the wrong way. Like sometimes you're at the crag and I hear people say, you can do it, in such a way that's like you've got this, you can still do this, like in such a way that's like it's only okay if you do it. It's almost like, whereas if we inform our partners what our like motivations are, what our intentions are for a session, it might be like they don't encourage you to sort of push through like fear or like push through to you like injured or whatever, or push through, like imply that it's only okay if you do make it to the end. They might support you in a way of like, that's so cool how you tried hard, or it's so cool how focused you are, you know.
I like that.
Or you know, they won't over push you. So like just stating your intentions are a great way to remind yourself of why you're there and remind your partner as well.
That's wonderful. Okay, so something that I'll be trying to do certainly as I go out is trying to identify that and remind myself of that internally, but also, yeah, sharing it, just saying it out loud is really nice.
If you can be aware of, you know, there's a bit of a mindfulness thing here, you know, mindfulness, like paying attention to your experience in the present moment without judgment. And, you know, that can be paying attention to what's going on in your body or what's going on with your mind as well. And you might recognize a thought come up. And if you can see a thought that come up that's like, oh, what are people going to say if I fall off? You're recognizing an extrinsic motivator there. And you know, think about extrinsic motivators. They tend to be fear-based. They tend to be, you know, what if I don't do this? Rather than, you know, I really want to be here. I'm like positive, present, like enjoying this. Extrinsic motivators, like, what if I don't make it to the chains? Or what if I I really need to, you know, make it onto the podium? Or what is someone going to say if I slip off the start here, you know? So I think those thoughts do tell you something about like what motivators are present. And really, when we're really motivated, we're motivated to be there. We're very present. We don't really have, it's more of a quiet mind that you'll have of, you know, just a quiet mind, a positivity, a real presence. So yeah, if you recognize distracting thoughts come up, that could tell you a little bit about your kind of, your distractions, your fears, and like probably your extrinsic motivators.
Yeah. Really wonderful. I mean, God, this conversation has just gone in a totally different direction than I thought it would, and in just the most delightful way, man. Well, let's get practical for the last few minutes that we have here, and do talk about goals and SMART goals versus, you know, maybe less effective goals.
Yeah, so I think like an acronym that people use like for setting good goals is like a SMART or SMARTer, like specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. I think relevant is really big for me. I think relevant is like, it's relevant to your, you know, what you want to do, your big why. And that's kind of the really big one for me. That's sort of a model that people use to help like make sure that goals aren't getting out of hand, that they're not just pie in the sky, that they're not like, they are kind of serving you best. And you can sort of iterate that process a bit. You can come back and check in on how that, you know, whether your goal is still serving that, or if the environment has changed, the context has changed, and if like the goal isn't still serving you. But for me, it's most important to work from that kind of why. So I think that acronym be really helpful for being structured. And Ryan, you said that you're into structure and you like that.
Specific,
I'm a person that really like
measurable, attainable,
measurable, relevant, and time bound.
So okay, right. So this is for outcome goals because
absolutely,
for time bound, right? And so, you know, one big goal could be I want to send the route, and then you're going to maybe do a handful of other goals that will help you to hopefully, you know, roll up into sending that route. And so you've got some of those smaller goals, but keeping them SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound will then help us to work our way up into that broader goal. I mean, that seems to make perfect sense. I certainly do that. I mean, I do, and I've talked with others. I think you worked with Tim Emmett, right, as he was working on Aravea, and he was always, for a while, he was posting a lot of his goals for the route, and they would be very practical. Get to X clip and rest for 2 seconds. Get to X clip and rest for 8 seconds. And, you know, very, very specific. I guess one could get completely buried in the minutia if you set too many goals. Do you have a sense for what kind of the right amount of goal setting is without it just totally paralyzing us and making the process, you know, more of a job than it is a joy?
Too many little iterations can like distract you from the overall direction that you're going in, and maybe there are too many sort of obstacles sort of, you know, in your line of sight. I think that if you're, as long as there's a goal in front of you that's attainable and you can work towards, there's a stepping stone that you can reach that's like sort of reachable, you know, that's within sight. I think that's helpful to have a bunch of things sort of in your, you know, in front of you, in your windshield, if you like, that you can see that you've now got to like navigate or get to can distract you, and it's hard to direct your efforts to 3 different things at once if they're not perfectly in line. You can imagine your sort of your route to work being a little bit circuitous if you've got too many things to sort of direct your attention to. But again, I'm gonna repeat myself. I'm gonna go back. It's about the why. Get back to the why. Get back to the overarching motivation, the overall, like, the North Star, the big picture direction you're going in. That is the big driver, the move, the direction you're going, the big sense of, this is why I'm moving forward, and this is what forward is. And if that stepping stone in front of you should help you get there, should help you understand that is a forward step. If there's loads of things in the way, they look more like too many things that you need to do in the moment. And whereas really we want to like direct attention away from all these little outcomes, these little metrics, and into the task that's happening right now.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, I plot out my goals. I've got weekly, monthly, and yearly goals that I put in the Intentional Climber app, which you all have contributed to. Hazel's put some great meditations on there, and we'll be adding some more resources. But what I like about what you just said is I can set a recurring goal, and like I'm just going to set my recurring why, not really as a goal because it's more of just a reminder. But it's easy as a climber, I think, to kind of get in the weeds and just try to hit the next benchmark on the moon board or a training protocol or send the next route. But having like just a bit of a check-in, a bit of that reminder of that underlying motivation and fire and what fills us up that then informs everything else that we're doing is really nice. I'm just going to set my why. First I'm going to figure out my why. You got me started pretty good on that. But once I really drill down on that, I'm going to set it as like a recurring reminder in my app so that I can continue to check in on it as I'm setting my goals.
To see if you can like distill it down to like just a couple of words, right? Because we do this with a bit of the values as well. Because you can say like a value is community, but you might distill that down to actually is it friendship? It's actually connection. It's connection with people. You can be really, there's those sort of underlying more fundamental values. Like we do this exercise where you'll have like you pick out 10 values that mean out of a list of 50 that mean something to you, and then you distill it down to 5 and then to 3 or something, and then you get like a really clear picture. This little triad is telling you something about what's really important to you. And I think you do a similar thing when you have you have your why. If you can distill it down to like 2 or 3 words, you can like say that to yourself. It'll be your mantra, right? If your mantra is try or try hard, that's a really easy thing to remind yourself when you're like shaking out below the crux, right? Try hard. This is all I need to do. All I need to do right now is this. And then your whole thing that you're doing, your whole motivation, your reason for being on the wall, your reason for trying hard, your reason for all the discomfort, all the sacrifice, and everything you need to do is just distill down to something very, very simple. And it's something that's in your control as well. It's something that's like Ryan, you can try hard. That's something that's within your control. It's in your gift, right? Whereas like something is more of an outcome that is not always in your control, because if the top holes are wet, it's not your fault. You can try as hard as you like, but you won't reach that outcome. But the process goals, the more unique to you, that's something that you have more power over, I think.
Yes, dude. This was the conversation I needed right now. Thank you, Angus, man. I really appreciate it. I'm just absolutely delighted by where this one went. And for the listener, I'm going to put some resource links in the show notes for you. You can check out what Strongmind's offering. And I'll also put a link to the Intentional Climber app down there if you want to check that out for your goal setting and helping to determine your greater why. There's also a really good meditation in there by Hazel that I've been listening to lately, the gratitude meditation, that just kind of fills me up in a good way, and I get a sense of lightness before I start a session after listening to that one. So lots of resources in there. Angus, what else, if people want to work with you directly or get involved with the stuff that Strongmind's got going on, what's the best thing for them to do?
I think our newsletter, you can follow us on Instagram, strongmind.climbing, but our newsletter as well, we it's just like once every week or once every other week, we just share a thought, and we try and make it as interesting, as nuanced as possible, and it's free, and we get really, really good response from that. It's like it's a community of people like thinking, having some really interesting conversation, but it's just tends to be some really quite nuanced, interesting thoughts about like climbing and or just the kind of conversation we've had here, Brian.
Yeah, I will second that. I love those newsletters. I pretty much delete without reading every single newsletter that hits my inbox, except for your alls. And you write many of them, and Hazel writes many of them, and they're so interesting and sometimes personal, and sometimes kind of just hit me right when I need them. So yeah, thank you for all the work that you guys put into that. You put out an incredible amount of resources for free for the community, and then some great in-depth courses that are very, very reasonably priced, depending on those who are listening right there, what you might want to be working on. But yeah, man, really appreciate it. This was just a wonderful chat. It sounds like, the little one's falling back asleep, which is good. Hopefully you can have a little bit more of your Friday in peace.
Yeah, I'm sorry Hazel couldn't stick around for the whole conversation, and I'm sure she's good. But yeah, you thanks for putting up with my rambling. You would have had
this is all right. Look,
time.
Hazel's been on twice. This was due. You needed to have a solo episode here, Angus, and we'll do another one where Hazel can join. In fact, we actually got quite a bit of questions for you two about just parenting and climbing and goal setting and whether goals, how to navigate conflicting goals. If you really want to climb slab and she really wants to climb steep overhung or whatever. And so we'll save those. Maybe we can do a little follow-up conversation here at some point in time. It'll be a shorter one. We'll really time out the nap to get like 30 minutes and we'll follow up on some of these questions we didn't get to today.
I'd love a follow-up conversation. That sounds great.
All right, y'all. That wraps things up with Angus Kille and Hazel Findlay. She popped in there for a little bit as well, and Hazel's going to be coming back. We're going to do a special Q&A episode with her pretty soon to talk through a lot of the things that we weren't able to touch on in this conversation, but it worked out really well. I loved the deep dive with Angus there, and I'm going to tell you now what I've been thinking, like since I had this conversation, because I had this conversation with Angus, and in the moment, we were trying to drill down on my why, on my North Star, and we were kind of dancing around it. We were finding it, but then like kind of not quite distilling it exactly the way that I felt good about, or that Angus Angus could tell. He's done enough of these consultations where he could tell that I wasn't quite there with pinpointing my why. And so I really took some time after having this chat with Angus. And then there's great resources on the Strongmind site, as Angus mentioned in there. I'm going to link those in those show notes. So please dive into those if you came out of this conversation here as curious and maybe not quite as confident as you want to be. Like if you're curious but not confident with your why, like me, that was my experience, then take a look at those resources. And so I spent some time now after having this chat with Angus to really think about my why right now, because I did just finish a different, very focused why of really trying to push myself out of my comfort zone and become a boulderer. And that started with me just identifying an outcome goal of a grade, like V8. Actually, on a hazelnut was like, do V8. And I was like, oh God, okay. and then I backed into that, and the why became, can I become a boulderer? Can I really push myself and grow as a boulderer? And then I did it, which is cool. And then I kind of immediately switched into like, okay, I think it would be really wild to go from that to a super long, steep route, which I am very excited about, but I wasn't quite sure why. And Angus knew that. And so anyway, I spent some time thinking about it. And where I landed, y'all, is that I've my North Star, at least for now, for the foreseeable future, what I've identified and written down in my Intentional Climber app as my North Star is that I want to become a master of Red River Gorge climbing. And what that means to me right now, because I guess there's a handful of different styles, but for me, mastery at Red River Gorge climbing is the really steep, pumpy climbs, like the one that I've identified at the Mother Lode called Flower Power. And that's going to mean me becoming, or at least pursuing, as Angus said, one doesn't become a master, but one pursues it. But for me to pursue mastery in Red River Gorge style climbing, I need to get much better at my technique of climbing on very steep stuff, and my technique and my ability to rest and recover on marginal rests or good rests, heel hooks, drop knees, towing in, paddling, kind of that efficiency, bulletproof endurance and shoulders and core work. I mean, there's just so much. There's so much that goes into pursuing mastery in the steep sandstone climbing that I experience here at the Red and that I love so much. I think that is going to be a fantastic North Star for me for a while. And then the sub North Star of that, the binary star of that is that I just want to try freaking hard. I just want to try really, really hard. So those are the two things that I wrote down in Intentional Climber is pursue mastery in Red River Gorge climbing and try really, really hard. And so then my goals now that I'm creating, because you can set, weekly, monthly, and annual goals in the app there, my goals are all reflective of that. I do want to get better at slab climbing, and I do want to get better at granite climbing, for example. Like I'm going out to Squamish this August, and I want to have a lot of fun and get better at that. And so I'll do that. I'll go out there and I'll have like a little trip goal of pushing myself in those ways. But all of my main goals are going to be reflective of that North Star. And that has made my goal setting, my S.M.A.R.T goal setting, so much easier now. So I'm really grateful to Angus for pushing me so much to really explore and interrogate the big why, the big purpose. And now that I have that, the goals that I've set in Intentional Climber, and then thus the sessions that I'm scheduling to help me achieve my goals, right? So like if I set a goal, my weekly goal was to get better at recovering on marginal rests, right? So that's a goal. Well, how do I do that? Well, I have to schedule a session where I climb until I almost want to puke on a route or on the tread wall, and then I find a marginal rest and I work on recovering on it and shaking and sinking into my feet and opening up my hips and controlling my breathing. And so all of that's like now much clearer. Not only am I highly motivated, but I'm also much more focused and consistent with how I'm going to work towards achieving these goals. And so all of that's in the Intentional Climber app. I'm going to put a link down there for that as well. By the way, since launching this app, which has been in the works for over a year now, but we only launched it publicly about a week ago, and now we have users in 29 countries, which is freaking awesome. You guys are so cool. Thank you. If you're listening to this right now and you've downloaded Intentional Climber and you're in there and you're starting to use it, I really appreciate that. Send me feedback. We're going through a lot of updates. I mean, I got a ton of feedback from Hazel, for example. She's contributed meditations to it, which I love. There's a gratitude meditation in there that I mentioned in this conversation here with Angus. There's a gratitude meditation in there that I consider aid. Like straight up, I listen to that and I feel lighter on the wall. It is wild what that guided meditation does for me. And then she's got other guided meditations in there as well, which is really cool. And then we've got coaching plans. We got Chris Hampton has a coaching plan in there, Stronger Fingers in 6 weeks, and Colin McGee. We've got one with Charlie Schreiber that's going to be released very soon. So anyway, there's really cool resources in there. If you've had a chance to poke around, I'd love to hear your feedback. We've got updates and improvements coming with all of your feedback, and it's just going to get better and better. But what I love most about it is its focus on intentionality and mindset and motivation. So if you've identified your North Star and if you've got some goals and if you're ready to reflect and journal and just get more out of your climbing journey, just not just the physical aspects of it, the training and all that stuff's in there, but also just the emotional and mental and joyful fulfillment that we get out of our journey as climbers as we achieve our goals. Ooh, that feels good. It's all in there. Anyway, you can check it out. Put a link down there, and you can use code STRUGGLE to get a discount and also to access a free coach plan when you sign up. So that's really cool. Appreciate you checking out Intentional Climber. And typically these pro clinics are only available for Apple subscribers and Patreon members. But I wanted to make this one available to you, as I mentioned earlier, because I just think it is so beneficial. And because Hazel's been so helpful with supporting me with the Intentional Climber app, I also wanted to make this available to you all so that you could get a sense for what Strongmind does and support them. So if you can support me through becoming a Patreon member or Apple subscriber, I'd really appreciate it. Or by downloading the Intentional Climber app, which will, of course, support you because it's a freaking awesome app, then that really helps me to keep making these shows. And then also pop on over to Strongmind. Those links are right down there for you. Check out what they're offering. They're awesome, as I'm sure you could tell from this short conversation here with Angus and Hazel. They're doing really cool things over there. All right, I think that wraps things up over here. I really appreciate you. I hope you're getting after it. I hope you've identified your big why and you're ready to pursue it with absolute gusto. And I'm just so excited to hear how that goes for you. Have an awesome, awesome day, and I'll see you soon.